Hello and welcome to another edition of Nammernan Interviews. Today, I will be talking to user Ltranc. Ltranc is a well-known bug user in high ladder in the Monotype competitive scene. He very often uses various types of bug builds that allow him to still manage a very high rating on the ladder. The reason why this is impressive is because Bug is typically not seen as a very good type. Some even say that Bug is a noob type, if you will. But Ltranc has avoided all of these criticisms of Bug and is still able to take the type to a very successful height. Most notably, he managed to get top 3 on the Monotype ladder during the last season of Monotype, which I believe was Season 7. With that being said, I wanted to take an interview with him to see what his views on the metagame would be, and just see what goes through the mind of someone who mains Bug. So without further ado, let's get on to those questions. I asked Ltranc, what are your favorite types to use while laddering? Now, obviously, he uses Bug on his main, but when he's climbing on his ults, he likes to use Fighting, Ground, and Fire. These are some interesting types, as they also are relatively offensive. Fighting and Fire in particular are very offensive. Ground can sometimes be a bit balanced if he runs the Sandless variant, but from what I've seen, he does use Sand, so it is mainly offense-oriented. So it is very likely that he just likes the offense archetype and thinks that Bug is probably one of the best ways for him to do so. Which makes a lot of sense, because Bug is one of the few types with access to webs, and that is one of the best facilitators of offense in the metagame. The only caveat is that you have to use Bug, but as we've seen, he's able to make it work, so let's move on to the next question. I asked Ltranc, what is your least favorite matchup to play in general? He responded by saying that Bug versus Regieleki or Raichu Alola Electric in Gen 8 National Dex Monotype was really bad. And that makes a lot of sense when you consider that Bug does not have a ground type. This has been a thing forever, and yes, you can say that Nincada is a ground type, but it's a not fully evolved Pokemon, and it's a not fully evolved Pokemon that also just has no redeemable qualities as well, unlike stuff like Bisharp or Chansey. So, unfortunately, Bug can kind of just get swept very easily by a very strong electric type, and the only other bug types that can deal with electric somewhat are the bug grass types, and the bug grass types are also notably not very good. Stuff like Leavanny is an example of Pokemon that you would use, and those are typically not very bulky, and they obviously compound their fire weakness among other weaknesses, like flying. So yeah, Electric Spam is very powerful against Bug, and taken to the fact that Raichu Alola doesn't even have to care about webs due to how absurdly fast it is, paired with Rising Voltage, yeah, it can be very rough for Bug to deal with that, so this answer makes a lot of sense. I asked Ltranc what his advice for new players would be. He responded by saying that a big thing is just playing games to get experience with the meta, and also that you should learn from your mistakes from a bad play so that you don't repeat it in the future. This is very solid advice, and is also something around the lines of what Amphibian said in his interview, so for those of you who are newer to Monotype, please keep this in mind. It may feel very rough losing to a certain type or a certain type of team consistently, but if you keep practicing and you keep learning how to use your type and what your type can do, eventually you will find yourself being able to climb higher on the ladder and maybe even eventually get into a tournament. But yes, practice will always make perfect. Don't give up if you lose 1 or 2 games. You must keep trying, no matter how frustrating it is, if you truly want to improve. I asked Ltranc a little more fun question. I asked him what games besides Mons does he play, and as you can tell from his profile picture that I showed you before, he is a big Fire Emblem fan. and he specifically likes Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, which is a 3DS game that came out a while ago now. But yeah, don't comment on this. Fire Emblem is a very popular franchise. It's kind of similar to Pokemon. Well, not really similar to Pokemon. They're only similar in being RPGs, but they're very different when it comes to gameplay. But yeah, it is another Nintendo game, and I do find that a lot of Pokemon players tend to be massive Nintendo fans, which isn't shocking, but it is always nice to see like what kinds of games different types of people play. I asked Ltranc what he thinks the biggest issue is when it comes to new players or low ladder. Ltranc responds with trying to do wacky teams without knowledge of how to properly support their weird builds. This is very true, and also something that I myself am a victim of from time to time. Sometimes you will see high ladder players do ridiculous builds, and they'll work, but when a lower ladder or less experienced player does it, it won't work as well. And the reason why this happens is because of experience, as I mentioned before. Some people are very experienced with their type and can make stuff like, for example, Trap-inch Ground work. But if you try to do something similar like Ninkata Bug without understanding how the Pokemon work or what gives these Pokemon these niches, you will find yourself just griefing your elo very consistently. So it's always important to get a better understanding of the type before you start doing random builds. So using a sample team, for example, and just doing small little deviations without going absolutely off the walls will help you learn to eventually create a weird build. Because, especially in Monotype, you can get away with a lot of strange builds, but you have to be well aware of what your Pokemon do and what these options are. For example, I want to make a team on either Flying or Psychic with Galarian Articuno, but I haven't found a good way to do it yet. I'm finding that it may be possible on Psychic due to screens and it being able to set up, but I have to still somehow justify how I can utilize its flying typing better than any of the other Pokemon that can be used behind screens. So with that being said, let's move on to the next question. I asked Ltranc what range he considers high elo to be on the Monotype ladder. His response was probably like 1650 plus. This answer is very interesting due to the fact that it's way higher than what Do Amphibian said. And on top of that, it's also the top 30, roughly, of the Monotype ladder, which means only 30 people can be high elo in his eyes at a time. Now, high elo to a lot of people in various competitive games does vary. Some people believe that high elo should be only the top 10% of the player base, or the top 5% of the player base. Some people think that high elo should be only the top 30 or top like handful of players. Like a flat handful of players should be considered high elo. It varies from player to player, and even in competitive Pokemon, we can see this as well through Ltranc and Do Amphibian's answers. Now, we don't have a solid ranking system like games like League of Legends or games like Overwatch. We don't have a solid ranking system, but we do have MMR numbers and ranges and a top 500. So we do what we can with those values to determine what a high elo player would be. And it can lead to a lot of varying opinions on what this is, which is why I asked this question, and why I will keep asking this question to all my interviewees, because I think the answers will provide, or at least show, the varying opinions of what high elo in Monotype is. So without further ado, let's move on to the next question. I asked Ltranc what his favorite Pokemon was. His answer was Mega Beedrill. He just wishes that Bug Poison wasn't the world's worst stab combination, but he does believe that the Mon is very cool. Seeing as he is a bug user, it does make sense that a bug type is his favorite Pokemon, and Mega Beedrill is a pretty good Mon. I also like it quite a bit, and using it whenever I played Bug back in Gen 7 and Gen 8, it was always very fun to use it. Or, I think it was only Gen 7, I don't think Gen 8 I used Mega Beedrill, but I did use it a lot in Gen 7. It was very fun to use, and in Nat Dex it was fun to use as well, but unfortunately he's very hard to be optimal with due to the fact that his stab combination is rough, as he mentions. But that's alright, because at least we got the Mon, and it is still a very fun Mon to use. You can still do Fell Stinger stuff, like it may not be the most viable, but it is a very fun Mon to use, and it's one of those Mons that you kind of just run on ladder when you want to have a little bit of fun, and get some very high highs with a Bug team, so yeah. We'll move on to the next question though. I asked Ltranc what his favorite animal IRL was. His response was that he thought that Mantis Shrimp were really hardcore, and he wanted to have a Bug-type Mantis Shrimp Pokemon with huge power potentially in the game. Now, Mantis Shrimp is a very interesting animal, and they're also just very, very flashy as well. So it is very interesting that he does pick a normally aquatic Pokemon though, or not Pokemon, but animal, rather than something that's more, you know, like a Bug, considering Bug is his favorite type, but Mantis Shrimp are very interesting. And it would be nice to see a Mantis Shrimp in the game. I'm actually quite surprised that there isn't a Mantis Shrimp Pokemon in the game, but seeing one would be cool, I will not lie. But let's move on to the next question. This one's a simple one. I asked Ltranc what his favorite color was, and very plainly he put purple. The only comment I have to say about this is that his name on Pokemon Showdown is indeed purple, so I think he was very happy with the name he got, considering that you can't really choose it unless you're like a high rating official in the Pokemon scene. So yeah, I'm sure he's very happy when he got that. I asked Ltranc whether he liked playing tours or ladder more, and which one he found more interesting or entertaining to watch. He responded by saying that he felt tours were better to play because he can't see a number going down. Now this response is very interesting because a lot of people tend to get anxiety when they get ready for tours, and get very pent up and worried about potentially losing a tournament match, especially for major team tours. But it seems like Ltranc doesn't share this viewpoint and instead worries a lot more about losing his ladder rating. Which, considering he ladders more than he does play tours, I think that completely makes sense from his perspective. Very interesting answer though. I'm very shocked that both him and Doomphibian both said that they prefer tours more because they value their ladder rating a lot more than they do their performance in tournaments, which is very interesting. But yeah, let's move on. I'm sure this is a question that everyone wants to know. What is the inspiration for Ltranc's name? Now the answer is actually very funny. He said that it's his dad's work email. When he was a little kid, he used to upload YouTube videos on his dad's Gmail account, and he kept using that alias everywhere because coming up with a new name was very hard, and I cannot lie, that is very, very true. Coming up with a name for your gamertag on the spot is definitely challenging. When I was a kid, I had the same thing. I struggled to come up with a name until I just named myself something random on Pokemon Showdown, and it has stuck ever since. But yeah. His father's work email is a very interesting one to use. But yeah, that is definitely a very funny source for his gamer tag, and the fact that he uses it on places other than Pokemon Showdown makes it even funnier. But yeah, let's move on. For this question, I asked Ltranc what his favorite set on a Pokemon was ever, and that it didn't have to be viable or optimal or even one from this gen. He responded by saying he had a blast using Assault Vest Max Attack Arachnid in Gen 8. So, This Pokemon is actually typically run more defensively, since Water Bubble makes up for its rather lackluster attack, and not having to use its lackluster attack, or not having to invest in its lackluster attack and maximizing bulk was seen as a lot more optimal, but maximizing in attack does do a lot of damage, as its liquidations do hit incredibly hard on neutral targets, due to Water Bubble just almost doubling its damage output. So yeah, I do think that set is quite fun. I actually did use Max Attack Arachnoid a couple of times in Gen 7 as well. Not with Assault Vest, granted, but I did use Max Attack Arachnoid, and that thing can hit hard, I can tell you that. But yeah, using Assault Vest to also tank special moves very well. Assault Vest in general is just a very fun item to use on Arachnoid. It's very unfortunate that now it's been relegated to Sticky Web user, but not much we can do about that. That being said though, let's move on to the next question. So I asked Ltranc why he chose Bug. Why is this his favorite type? He responded by saying that Mega Beedrill and Arachnoid were some of his favorite Pokemon coming into his first run of Pokemon Moon. So when he started playing Monotype in Gen 7, he decided that he wanted to use both of them, which led to him using Bug. He didn't actually start playing Monotype seriously until he got back into Mons during COVID era, so midway through Gen 8. And ever since then, he stuck to Bug since it was the only one who knew how to play, and he became a little bit notorious in the Monotype room for being the guy that only brought Bug to everything. He enjoys the Mons designs, the offensive nature of the type, and the underdog vibe it provides. Now, some of you longtime viewers of this channel may recognize that some of the things that are said in this response are very similar to things that I said in some of my videos when it came to why I started playing Mons and why I started playing fighting as one of my main types. And that is true. Most of the stuff that is said here can be echoed into why I play fighting a lot. I love the Pokemon's designs as well. I want to make it work, and I also do somewhat enjoy the underdog vibe. But I also do genuinely believe, or I genuinely believed in those gens specifically, that fighting had value, even as the low tier type as it was, in both Gen 7 and 8. It's actually very good this gen, but I haven't played it a lot this gen, outside of testing Emboar. And that's mainly because it no longer has that underdog vibe, and it just doesn't feel as interesting to play anymore because of it. There's no, like, unhidden tech that no one's really considered. There's no secret sauce that needs to be considered. Nope, everything is almost completely optimized for fighting, and it feels really lame to play. Which, fighting has always had that issue, but this video is obviously not about me. We're gonna keep focusing on Ltranc and his responses, and I do think that maining a type because of the underdog vibe is very cool. So this is a more fun question. I decided to ask Ltranc what his thoughts on Ariados was. He responded by saying that Leafeon Lol, which is another notorious user, has owned him with Web's Poison many a time. And he is constantly surprised by how slow it is in Band Bats, but Sucker Punch, Knockoff, and Toxic Spikes are still goated. Game Freak, please save him, and Ledian, please, Evolution or Mega. And I 100% believe. I 100% agree with his opinions on Ariados. Ariados' Web's Poison is very funny because obviously Webs is very powerful, and Poison actually does have very good mons to abuse Webs with. Iron Moth, for example, is a really good one. Sneasler can even abuse it to an extent with Choice Band. And there's like a ton of other good abusers of it as well. The problem is both keeping the webs up and also, well, not really keeping the webs up since you have a Spin Blocker and P.E.K.K.A Run that's also able to abuse webs pretty well since it has Nasty Plot and two good and powerful stabs. But yeah, the problem is that at the end of the day you're using Ariados, and if that thing gets taunted or killed in the first couple of turns, you kind of just wasted the entire point of running your team. Because without those webs, a lot of those Pokemon can't do it. do as well as they would like, because they would get outspread by stuff like Roaring Moon, or not even Regieleki, but like a lot of other fast Pokemon as well, like Meowscarada, Greninja, Ogerpon as well. But yeah, very interesting mon, and yes, please, Game Freak, save Ledian and Ariados. They need help desperately. And now I asked Ltranc what his thoughts on Bug were this generation, and what his favorite generation to play Bug was. His response was that Gen 9 Bug has been very fun. Low kicks and Cleavor have been very great for him, and Fortress being the world's silliest Bolt Beamer is great, and he's enjoying the culling of both Roost and Defog. He also believes that his recency bias may be the reason why he plays current gen a lot compared to the old gens, but Gen 9 is his favorite official cartridge gen for Bug. Gen 8 was also pretty fun for him, but getting gooped up by the top 3 types was very unpleasant for him, and he thinks his actual favorite format for Bug was Gen 8 National Dex Monotype. And I believe the reason for that is because he can use Mega Beedrill, which is one of his big motivators. But yes, this response is very interesting to say the least. He is a very big liker of Lokix and Cleavor, and I could say, as someone who has dabbled in Bug a little bit, those Pokemon do feel amazing to use. Lokix on Dark especially feels very good to use as well. Fortress, with the Ice Spinner and Volt Switch sets, has been very annoying for me. It's very annoying to run into in a ladder, but it is very goofy, indeed. But his response to the culling of Roost and Defog is very interesting, because a lot of people actually complain about the removal of Roost specifically. Not so much Defog, but Roost being removed from a bunch of Pokemon was very sad for a lot of people, me included. And the fact that he enjoys that is definitely, I wouldn't say a hot take, but it's definitely a different approach to how he feels about the current state of the game. Now, the removal of Defog, on the other hand, is very valid. Defog was very annoying to play around, and it just felt like too free of hazard removal, and it kind of made having Rapid Spin just not feel as important. But yeah, Defog's culling has definitely been good for the game, I would say. Because even though Hazard Stack is OP, it's not really the hazards themselves, it's more so stuff like Hisui and Samurott just setting spikes for free without any repercussions. That's very obnoxious. And also a lot of the, they also just gave a ton of Pokemon spikes for like little to no reason. Spikes and Stealth Rock actually, because for some reason they gave Hydreigon Stealth Rocks, which I still don't understand, but yeah. I do think that these answers are very, very valid. And it was very interesting to see his perspective on how Bug is. Who's to say that maybe he might like Gen 5 Bug more? It could be possible, but he does definitely seem to enjoy current gen a lot. And with that, that's it. That is all the questions I had for Ltranc, and I'm very happy to have interviewed him. His responses to a lot of the questions were very interesting. He definitely has a very different view of the game compared to a lot of other people, especially in the tournament scene. Seeing as he is mainly a ladder user, he does focus a lot more on how he feels about ladder and how that experience is in general. But also, he just seems to very much enjoy the Bug type as a whole. And he just very much enjoys just playing Bug, experimenting with Bug, and doing anything with Bug, and he's been very successful with doing it. And he isn't like a true one-trick, he's not someone who can't play other types. He can absolutely play other types, and has shown that he can play other types as well. But he definitely still likes Bug a ton. And he seems to be having a great time playing the game, playing Bug, and also maintaining high elo at the same time. It's very admirable. It's honestly a dream, truthfully. But yeah, that will be it for this interview. So hopefully we'll be able to get another interview sometime soon. We're not entirely sure when that's going to happen though, since I haven't gotten a lot of comment back from the other players I've reached out to. But hopefully we will get another interview soon, and I will see you in that video next time. Take care.